Something is shifting in your world, Sagittarius, and you can feel it even if you cannot yet name it precisely. There is a pressure building, the kind that does not come from outside circumstances alone but from the combination of outside circumstances and something rising inside you, something that has been building for weeks or maybe months and that is now reaching a point where it demands to be addressed. The next 7 days are not going to be ordinary days. They are going to carry a specific kind of weight, the weight of decisions that matter, decisions that have been quietly forming beneath the surface of your life for longer than you realize, decisions that the universe has now gathered together and placed directly in your path. You cannot walk around them. You are going to have to choose your way through. Sagittarius is a sign that was made for movement, for exploration, for charging forward into new territory with the bow drawn and the aim steady. You are not a sign that thrives in stagnation. You need to be moving, growing, expanding, always reaching toward the next horizon. But even the most freedom-loving archer knows that there are moments when the most important thing is not to move faster but to choose better. This is one of those moments. The universe has been placing a series of crossroads in front of you, and the next 7 days are when those crossroads will become impossible to step around. You will not be able to keep moving without making a choice about each one. Some of these decisions will feel uncomfortable. Some will feel like they are pulling something away from you. Some will feel exciting in the way that only real movement feels exciting, because they are asking you to step into territory that is larger than where you have been. And some will feel both at once, which is how the biggest choices in life almost always feel. They carry both the possibility of genuine expansion and the possibility of real loss. That is not a reason to turn back. That is a reason to get clear, to take honest stock of where you are and who you are becoming, and to choose with the kind of deliberate courage that Sagittarius is fully capable of. These 11 decisions are arriving for a reason. You are more ready for them than you know. Decision 1. Whether to trust what your gut has been saying for weeks. This is the first decision, and in many ways it is the most foundational because it is a decision about whether to trust yourself. Every other decision you face in the next 7 days will be navigated more wisely if you have settled this one first. Your gut has been speaking to you. Not loudly, not with the drama that would make it impossible to ignore, but consistently, with the quiet, persistent insistence of something that returns every time you push it aside, something that refuses to stay filed under things I am probably overthinking because it knows that what it is telling you is real and important and deserves your full attention. It has been telling you something about a person, a situation, a direction your life has been heading, or some combination of all three. And every time you have tried to quiet it with reason, with logic, with the fairness that Sagittarius always tries to extend even to the things that are hurting it, it has come back. Sometimes louder, sometimes as a different feeling, a different kind of internal signal, but always carrying the same essential message. Pay attention. Something is not right or something is right and you have been ignoring it. Trust what you know. Sagittarius, you are not someone who normally doubts yourself. You move through the world with a confidence and an enthusiasm that most people find genuinely inspiring. You make decisions quickly. You commit fully. You are not someone who sits in endless uncertainty weighing every angle before taking a step. But somewhere along the way during this recent period, something happened that made you second-guess the very instincts that have always guided you effectively. Maybe it was someone who made you feel that your perception was unreliable or dramatic or unfair. Maybe it was a situation that was framed in a way that made trusting yourself seem like the selfish or the difficult option. Whatever it was, the result is that you have been sitting with information your own instincts provided, and you have been uncertain about what to do with it. This week, that uncertainty reaches a tipping point. Something will happen that makes the cost of not trusting yourself visible in a way it has not been before. And the decision in front of you is simply this. Are you willing to honor what you know? Are you willing to treat the information that lives in your body, in your gut, in the quiet knowing that surfaces when you are still enough to feel it, as real and legitimate data? Not as proof, not as grounds for immediate dramatic action, but as something worth taking seriously and moving carefully in response to? This is not about being reckless. It is about respecting yourself enough to take your own perception seriously. And that decision, if you make it honestly this week, will change the quality of every other decision that follows. Decision 2. Whether to have the conversation you have been avoiding. There is something that needs to be said. You know exactly what it is. You have been rehearsing it in fragments, in the quieter moments of your day, and then finding reasons not to let it take full form. There have been drafts of it in your mind, conversations that started clearly and then got complicated, words that felt right in the imagining and then seemed too large or too risky when you brought them up against the reality of saying them to the actual person. And so you have let it sit. Maybe you have told yourself that it is not the right time, that the circumstances are not ideal for this kind of conversation. Maybe you have decided that the other person is not in a place where they can receive what you need to say, and you are protecting them from having to hear it before they are ready. Maybe you have convinced yourself that the discomfort of saying nothing, which is real but manageable, is easier than the risk of saying something and having it land badly or create a distance you cannot repair. All of these are reasonable considerations. None of them are the actual reason you have not spoken. The actual reason is that saying this thing out loud will make it real in a way that silence has not made it real, and you are not entirely sure you are ready for that. But Sagittarius, you are a sign of honesty. Not polished, diplomatic, carefully managed honesty. Real honesty, sometimes blunt, sometimes uncomfortable, the kind that says what is actually true rather than what would be easier to hear. That honesty is one of your most powerful qualities, and something in you knows that the silence you have been maintaining is not peace. It is not the absence of conflict. It is the management of conflict, a careful and ongoing containment of something that wants to be expressed, and that is slowly, quietly costing you energy and authenticity every day that it remains contained. This week, the pressure of that containment will reach a point where a decision must be made. Not a gentle turning point where you can still choose to delay, but an actual juncture. You can continue to hold it, but the cost of holding it will become unmistakably clear. Or you can speak, which will not be without its risks but which will at minimum move the situation forward rather than keeping it frozen at the same temperature indefinitely. Sagittarius does not thrive in situations that are frozen, in conversations that are always almost happening but never arriving. You are built for honest engagement. The conversation you have been avoiding is exactly what your nature was designed for. It will not be easy, but on the other side of it is either genuine resolution or essential clarity, and both of those are better than the limbo you have been maintaining. If what you are hearing feels accurate, know that it could happen if you applied this energy consistently for 21 consecutive days. That is the 21-day challenge pinned at the top of this channel. It is built around daily guidance, focused direction, and real momentum. If you are tired of staying in the same cycle, that structure is exactly what has been missing. Decision 3. Whether to let go of something that no longer fits your life. There is something in your life right now. It may be a commitment you made when you were different from who you are now, a relationship that served a version of you that has been outgrown, a habit or a routine or a way of operating that was useful at one point and is now simply occupying space, or a version of yourself that you have been holding onto out of familiarity even though it no longer reflects who you are becoming. Whatever it is, you know it does not quite fit the current shape of your life. You have known this for a while, and yet letting go has been more complicated than you expected it to be, more complicated than you might think it should be given how clearly you can see the misfit. There is a misconception about Sagittarius that shows up even in how Sagittarius sometimes thinks about itself. The misconception is that because you love freedom, you must naturally be good at releasing things. That because you always have one eye on the horizon, you must not get too attached to what is immediately in front of you. But that is not the full picture. When Sagittarius commits to something, when you invest your fire and your enthusiasm and your genuine belief into something or someone, that investment is real and it runs deep. Your fire burns hot and long when it is genuinely engaged. And releasing something that was truly real, that represented an authentic investment of your energy and your hope, is not simple even for someone who loves freedom as much as you do. But this week, the question of whether to let go will arrive with more urgency than it has carried before. Something will change in the landscape or something will become visible that was not visible before, that makes the current holding on more clearly costly than the releasing would be. Something will show you, in a way that is difficult to argue with, that what you have been holding does not have a place in the next chapter of your life. Not because it was wrong, not because you failed in your commitment to it, but because you have grown into someone for whom it no longer fits. Growth always, without exception, requires leaving some things behind. Not because those things had no value, but because you have moved past the territory where their value can reach you. The decision to let go is not a surrender. It is an act of honesty about what is true. And Sagittarius, truth has always been what you live by. Decision 4. Whether to take a risk that feels large but necessary. There is an opportunity in front of you, or perhaps it has not yet fully formed into what you would recognize as an opportunity. Perhaps it is still in the shape of a direction, a pull, a possibility that you can feel the outline of without yet being able to see the full picture. Something is asking you to move toward it, and the scale of the move it is asking for is not small. It is asking for genuine courage, the kind that is not the absence of fear but the decision to move forward while fear is present. Because what is possible on the other side of this risk is worth more than the certainty of staying where you are. Sagittarius was built for exactly this kind of moment. Your entire spirit is oriented toward expansion, toward the horizon, toward the uncharted territories that have not been mapped yet. You find the unknown exciting in a way that many people find genuinely baffling. You are drawn to what might be possible with a kind of magnetic pull that has led you to some of the most important and defining experiences of your life. This is one of your most powerful and authentic qualities. But even you, fire sign, Jupiter-blessed, natural-born adventurer that you are, feel the weight of self-doubt when the risk is large enough. When the stakes are genuinely high, when the move you are being asked to make is not just a new experience but a fundamental shift in direction, even Sagittarius can hear the voice that asks whether this is wise, whether the timing is right, whether you have enough to work with, whether you might be making a mistake. This week, that risk presents itself in a form that requires a concrete decision. You will not be able to keep circling it, keeping it at the comfortable distance of something you are considering. The moment of choosing will arrive. And when it does, Sagittarius, the question you need to ask yourself is not whether the risk is real, because it is, and pretending otherwise would not be honest. The question is whether what you are protecting by staying safe is genuinely more valuable than what becomes available to you if you step forward. Is the certainty of where you are worth more than the possibility of where you could be? Only you can answer that. But your gut already knows what the answer is, and your gut has been trying to tell you for a while. Decision 5. Whether to redefine what you want from a key relationship. There is a relationship in your life that is reaching a turning point. Not necessarily a dramatic one, not necessarily one that involves crisis or conflict, though it may. But a turning point in the more fundamental sense, the kind where the relationship cannot continue in the same form without either one or both people being willing to acknowledge that something needs to change. And the change that is needed requires something that does not always come easily to Sagittarius. It requires specificity. It requires that you move past the comfortable vagueness of things are mostly fine or things feel off somehow and actually look honestly at what you need, what you want from this relationship going forward, what you are no longer willing to accept, and what you are genuinely willing to offer in return. Sagittarius can be elusive in relationships, not because you do not care deeply, but because your love of freedom can make it genuinely difficult to articulate exactly what you want without feeling like you are drawing lines around yourself. Stating clearly what you need in a relationship can feel like the beginning of a negotiation you did not want to have, or like the end of a spontaneity you value. So you tend to stay in the general, to let things develop organically, to hope that what you need will simply show up in the space created by not demanding it. Sometimes this works beautifully, and sometimes it means that a relationship drifts for longer than it should without either person being clear about what they are actually in. This week, the relationship in question will reach a moment where that ambiguity becomes untenable. Something will happen, a conversation, a decision that needs to be made together, a moment of friction that exposes the gap between what each of you has been assuming, that makes the current lack of clarity actively costly. And the decision in front of you will be whether to name what you actually want, clearly, honestly, even knowing that naming it might change the dynamic in ways you cannot fully predict. The decision to be specific about what you need is one of the most honest and most courageous things you can do in any relationship. It is also the only way to find out whether the relationship can give you what you actually need, or whether what has felt like a relationship has actually been something else. Decision 6. Whether to stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided. There are people in your life, or perhaps on the edges of your life, who have formed a fixed picture of who you are and what you do. And you have been spending real energy, sometimes surprising amounts of it, trying to correct that picture. Trying to explain, to demonstrate, to show through your actions and your words that the version of you they are working with is not accurate, that there is more to you and your choices than the narrow interpretation they have settled on. Sagittarius values being understood. You communicate directly. You put honesty at the center of your interactions. And when someone holds a distorted picture of you, It creates a friction that is genuinely uncomfortable for someone who operates with the transparency that you do. It feels wrong in a specific way, the way that injustice feels wrong, the way that a false story feels wrong when you know the true one. And so you keep trying to correct it. You keep making your case. You keep believing that if you say the right thing in the right way, they will finally see what is actually true. But here is the decision that this week is presenting you with. Some people have made up their minds about who you are, not based on a careful assessment of evidence, but because the picture they have of you serves something in them. It aligns with the story they need to tell. It justifies something they want to do or avoid. And no amount of clarification from you is going to change it, because the source of the fixed picture is not a lack of information. It is a preference. And preferences of that kind do not yield to evidence. The question is how much more of your fire you are willing to burn in that direction. You have a finite amount of energy, Sagittarius. You are not an unlimited resource. Every flame that burns for the wrong thing, for the effort to be understood by people who have decided not to understand, is a flame that is not available for something else. Something that could actually use it. Something that could actually benefit from what you have to offer. This week, the decision is whether to keep explaining yourself, or to redirect that energy toward people and situations that meet your honesty with their own genuine openness. If this message is resonating with your sign right now, trust that it is not a coincidence. When the universe wants to speak to you, it sends exactly the right signal at exactly the right moment. And you are here because you needed to hear this today. Your support, whether as a subscriber or as a member of this community, is what keeps these messages alive. The ones that touch hearts, awaken minds, and transform lives. If this video has been making sense to you, drop in the comments the day you were born. Let us keep going. Decision 7. Whether to recommit to something you had started to abandon. There is something you were working on that you started to pull away from. It had your attention for a while, your real attention, and maybe your excitement, and then something shifted. Maybe it lost its early momentum. Maybe an obstacle appeared that was more significant than you had anticipated, and the energy required to get past it was more than you had available at that moment. Maybe your circumstances changed and this thing got crowded out of the available space in your life. Maybe you simply moved on the way Sagittarius sometimes does, toward the next interesting thing, and this project or this direction or this commitment went quiet. But it has not stopped calling you. It is still there in the background, in a thought that surfaces sometimes, in a familiar feeling that comes when something reminds you of it. And lately it has been calling a little louder. Not because external circumstances have changed dramatically, but because something in you has shifted, and when you turn to look at this thing now, you see it differently than you did when you stepped away. You see something that still has real value. You see something that is more relevant to who you are now than it was when you first left it. You see an opening that was not visible before. Returning to something does not come naturally to every Sagittarius. Your instinct is almost always to move forward, and doubling back can feel like a kind of admission, like you are acknowledging something you would rather not acknowledge about the first departure. But returning to something with new eyes, with the benefit of the time and the experience that has passed since you first engaged with it, is not a retreat. It is not going backward. It is choosing again with more information, with a clearer understanding of the value of what you had started and why it mattered. This week, the call to recommit will be present enough that it requires a decision rather than just an ongoing acknowledgement. What you were building before still has life in it. The question is whether you are willing to be the one who brings it back. Decision 8. Whether to change a pattern that has been holding you back. There is a pattern in your life that you recognize. You have seen it in operation before. It might even be something you have named, that you have discussed, that you have told yourself you were going to address. The intentions to change it have been real. But patterns are not changed by intentions alone, because patterns are not just habits of behavior. They are habits of thinking, of responding, of interpreting the world in a particular way that became automatic long before you had the self-awareness to notice it. And automatic things do not stop running simply because you have decided you would prefer them to. They require actual intervention, consistent and deliberate, sustained over enough time that the new response has a chance to become as natural as the old one. This particular pattern, the one that has been showing up in your life, is costing you something real and measurable. It is costing you opportunities that arrive and then pass by while you are engaged in the familiar loop. It is costing you energy that goes into maintaining the same cycle, dealing with the same kinds of situations in the same limited ways, rather than breaking the cycle and creating something genuinely different. It is costing you the version of your life that exists on the other side of the pattern, the version that becomes available the moment you find a different way to respond. This week, the pattern will show itself more clearly than it usually does. Something will happen that acts like a mirror, reflecting back to you the exact shape of what you have been doing and what it has been producing. And that clarity will make the decision unavoidable. You will either choose to use this moment of clear seeing to intervene, to actually do something different this time rather than just noticing the pattern again, or you will stay in it, which will feel easier immediately but harder over the months ahead. Sagittarius has the fire to break patterns. Your fire is exactly the kind of energy that can interrupt an automatic cycle and replace it with a conscious choice. This week is asking you to use that fire in this specific direction. Decision 9. Whether to ask for something you have been reluctant to request. Independence is one of your most defining characteristics, Sagittarius, and it is a quality that serves you in many ways. You figure things out. You chart your own course. You do not wait for someone else to solve your problems. You find the path or you make one. And there is real power in that orientation, a genuine capability that has carried you through situations where many people would have stalled. But that same independence has a shadow, a cost that does not always become visible until it is larger than expected. And the shadow of extreme independence is the reluctance to ask for what you need, even when asking would be the most direct and effective path to what you are trying to reach. There is something you need right now, something specific. It might be help with a practical situation that has become genuinely difficult to manage alone. It might be support of an emotional or relational kind, the kind that requires you to admit that you are carrying something heavier than one person should carry without assistance. It might be information or access or an opening that someone in your life or on the edges of your life actually has and could genuinely provide, if only you would ask. The thing you need is not unavailable. It is simply waiting behind a question that you have not asked. And you have not asked because asking feels like something. It feels like admitting that the capable, independent image you project has places where it is not the full picture. It feels like creating a vulnerability that you are not entirely comfortable with. It feels like relinquishing some of the self-sufficiency that you have come to think of as part of who you are. Sagittarius, those feelings are real, but they are protecting you from the wrong thing. The people worth having around you do not value you less for having needs. They are often waiting for the chance to meet them. This week, the cost of not asking will become visible enough that the decision cannot be deferred. You can continue managing something alone that was never designed to be managed alone, or you can speak up. The question is which of those options actually serves the life you are trying to build. Decision 10. Whether to protect your peace at the cost of disappointing someone. You do not like to disappoint people. For all of your directness and your independence, Sagittarius carries a genuine warmth, a real and active care for the people who occupy your world, a desire to be a source of good energy and generosity, rather than a source of disruption or dissatisfaction. You want to give. That generosity is one of your most beautiful qualities. But it has a cost when it is not balanced with an honest accounting of what you actually have to give, because you sometimes say yes to things you should say no to, and you sometimes stay in situations past the point where they are serving you because the idea of being the one who withdrew feels worse than the depletion of staying. This week, a situation will arise where protecting your own peace requires doing something that will not please someone else. It may be setting a limit on your time or your availability. It may be withdrawing from a commitment that was made with more certainty than the current reality supports. It may be simply choosing your own rest, your own direction, your own honest sense of what you need right now, over what was expected or assumed or asked of you. And the other person will likely have a reaction. They may be hurt. They may be frustrated. They may not understand, or they may understand but wish things were different. And you will feel the weight of that because you always do, because your care is real. But this decision is also asking you something that cuts deeper than any single situation. It is asking you who has the final authority over your time, your energy, your presence, and your peace. Because if the answer is always whoever would be disappointed by you exercising that authority, then it is not really yours at all. And Sagittarius, you were built for freedom. Real freedom. Not just the freedom of wide open spaces and new horizons, but the freedom to be honest about your own limits, your own needs, your own non-negotiables. Protecting your peace is not selfishness. It is the foundation without which the generosity you want to give has nowhere to come from. Decision 11. Whether to step fully into the next version of yourself. This is the decision that all the others have been building toward. Because every decision on this list is, in its own way, a decision about who you are in the process of becoming. Each one is a small or medium-sized choice that is also part of a larger choice, the choice of whether you are willing to step fully into the next version of yourself. The version that is waiting, that has been waiting with more patience than you may realize, that you can feel in the moments when everything else goes quiet, and you touch something in yourself that is larger and more capable, and more honest, than the daily version of you that manages circumstances and navigates other people's expectations. That version of you is not a departure from who you are now. It is not a reinvention. It is not someone unrecognizable. It is more like a deepening, a fuller expression of what was always there, but that a combination of life, of circumstances, of the accumulated weight of decisions made in smaller moments, had kept partially contained. You have been at the edge of this transition for a while. You have been able to feel it the way you can feel a change in weather before it arrives, in the quality of the air, in the pressure of the atmosphere. Something is coming. Something is becoming possible. Something in you is ready, even if the part of you that manages practical reality is still asking for more time. This week, the question of whether to step fully forward becomes concrete, not abstract, not something you can continue to process only in your internal life. It will ask you to make choices and take actions that are visible, that commit you to a direction, that close some doors in order to open others. The uncertainty will not have resolved by then. The guarantee of outcome will not have arrived. But here is what Sagittarius needs to hear. The waiting for certainty is its own kind of choice, and it is not the one that leads to the life you were built for. The archer does not wait until the wind is perfectly still. The arrow must be released. The next 7 days are asking you to release it. And what you are shooting toward, Sagittarius, is everything you have been aiming at for longer than you know. If this message resonated with your sign, trust that it is not a coincidence. When the universe wants to speak to you, it always sends exactly the right signal. And you are here because you needed to hear this today. Your support as a subscriber or as a member of this community is what keeps these messages alive. They are the messages that touch, awaken, and transform. If this video made sense to you, leave in the comments the day you were born. 7 days, 11 decisions, and a Sagittarius who is more ready for all of it than they know. The decisions outlined here are not being handed to you randomly by a universe that has no sense of what you can handle. They are arising now, in this specific form with this specific weight, because you have done the work, the quiet and internal and often invisible work of growing into someone who is finally in a position to meet them. That is how it works, even when it does not feel that way. Life does not place its most important crossroads in front of the people who are unprepared for them. It waits, sometimes with very considerable patience, for the moment when the person standing at those crossroads has enough clarity and enough courage and enough honest self-knowledge to choose well, even if not perfectly, even if not without fear, but well. That moment is yours. Right now. In these 7 days. You are a sign ruled by Jupiter, and that matters enormously in understanding what this week means for you. Jupiter is the planet of expansion in the most complete sense of that word. It expands not just what is available to you but your capacity to see what is available, to recognize possibility where others see only limitation, to reach for what is genuinely possible rather than accepting the boundaries of what is merely comfortable. Jupiter does not give you a life handed to you without effort. It gives you the vision to see what your effort could build, and the optimism that is not naive but is grounded in a genuine understanding of how possibility actually works in a real life. That vision and that optimism are your tools for this week. The decisions ahead of you are not designed to be easy. They are designed to be real. They are the decisions that real growth requires, the kind that cannot be made without something being at stake, without something being risked, without someone, including yourself, being asked to accept something they did not necessarily want to accept. That is the price of real movement. And real movement is the only kind that Sagittarius can live on long term. The comfortable choice, the safe choice, the choice that keeps everything in place and avoids all disruption, is not sustainable for you. Your fire needs to be directed at something real or it turns inward, and a fire turned inward is a very uncomfortable thing. So let it be directed outward. Let it be directed at these decisions, at each of the crossroads that the next 7 days will bring. Let the full brightness of your Sagittarian fire, your honesty and your courage and your genuine love of what is real. Be what lights the way through each choice. The archer draws the bow not knowing with perfect certainty where the arrow will land, but trusting the aim, trusting the arm, trusting that the trajectory set in motion will carry the arrow where it was always meant to go. Draw the bow, Sagittarius. The next 7 days are yours, and they are more important than they might look from the outside. Inside them, if you choose well, is the beginning of a chapter that will look completely different from the one you have been in. That difference is exactly what you have been reaching for.